I'm at John Eberhart's house.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool for me. I got you here. I can ask you anything I want.
Well, I've got some questions I could ask you too, Andy.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I've always been very envious of your shooting abilities.
Oh, yeah?
I used to shoot a lot in the 70s, shot a lot of leagues, and it was good. Our team always came in first place. I was the worst guy on our three-man team, but I was still pretty decent. And I've lost that over the years, that shooting ability, and it always impresses me to watch some of these younger guys, and I consider you a younger guy, how well you guys can shoot. You know, I know you don't like to take long shots, but if you have to and it's calm out, you're capable of it. And
Yeah.
as I age, I see myself not being able to do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in the whitetail woods, you know, most of the shots are 30 yards and in, but I love to practice long distance. And
yeah, I kind of understand the chip shot thing. I usually, whitetail hunting, I usually try to set up 12 to 20 yard shots, but back, I used to be able to be pretty proficient and capable of shooting 40.
Yep.
And now I feel like my max distance, because I'm only shooting 45 pounds, is like 25 yards.
Yeah.
And while there hasn't been any times where I've needed to shoot beyond that, it's still something that makes you feel mentally good to be able to do.
Yeah.
I don't have that anymore.
Yeah, you know, I've always said this. I love archery almost as much as hunting. So I really deep dive into archery, and I kind of have like a precision mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to work on being as accurate as possible, even to like really long distances, even though it's just for practice.
Yeah.
You know, and I like to test my gear and make sure my bow is tuned perfectly, and I try different arrow setups, just trying to achieve like minor improvements in accuracy, and it's fun for me.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I enjoy that just because it gives me more confidence, but it is definitely translated into just more confidence in the field. Even though my whitetail shots are usually, you know, 30 yards and in or so, I do feel confident if I have to take a little bit longer shot. And I've been going out west more and more the last 4 or 5 years. I've really fallen in love with that. And, you know, out there, a short shot is like 50 or 60.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
especially like on a mule deer or an antelope or something like that. Elk, obviously, you can get into some tighter quarters, but open country mule deer, I've shot 4 mule deer now, and my closest one was 2 years ago. That was 28 yards, but all the rest of them...
That was a stud. I saw a picture. That was a
good
giant.
One. That was a good one.
That was cool.
But the other 3 have all been 60 or more.
Wow.
And that was the closest I could get without exposing myself. So it does help out west. There's a lot of preparation. And I try to tell people, you don't just start flinging arrows at 60 and 70 yards. It's like, no, you practice at 80 and 90 and 100, and you get you get really good at those distances, and then those 40 and 50 and 60, they don't feel so daunting.
Right.
You know, you feel very, very confident. Just like you know, when you used to practice at 40, probably made those 20-yard shots feel like...
Chip shots.
Yes.
Yeah, chip shots.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's why I put so much stress on it. It is definitely kind of transferred over to some success in the field, but more it's just a confidence thing, because if I shoot, you know, I shoot the 90% of my shots at 60 and over, practicing. Yep. And then every once in a while, you know, I move up and I shoot those 20s and 30s, and I get up in a tree and I take some angled shots and on the roof. But when you're shooting that often at those distances, when you move up, it's just like, it's almost like a magnifying glass. Everything seems really...
And your form and everything has to be just perfect
Exactly.
at those longer distances.
Yeah,
so.
that muscle memory really gets dialed in. And so, yeah, I still try to get close. But, you know, on the whitetail thing, what I've noticed, because I do feel comfortable shooting a little further, a lot of times, if the situation sets up for it, I do like to set back a little more than maybe some guys do.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need to get right on that trail where it's a 10 or 15 yard shot. If there's some decent shooting lanes, I feel comfortable getting back at that 25 yard range, which is, you know, that's a fairly long shot at a whitetail. It's on the, you know, on the longer end maybe.
Interesting.
Get detected less. You know, sometimes it probably helps me, sometimes it probably hurts me, but that's kind of that 25-yard zone. If I can do it, I kind of feel comfortable being back in that a little bit.
I don't know. I'm just envious of guys now that I'm older, guys that can shoot like you.
Well, the gear's changed.
Yeah.
The gear has changed.
Yeah.
Think about when you were my age, like what the bows were like back then,
Yes. I remember when I started with a recurve. Yeah, it was, you had to practice all the time. And I mean, 20-yard shots after that, we were pushing it.
Yeah. So a lot of it probably isn't my ability. A lot of it is just more modern equipment. And yeah, I do work at it. I do practice, but a lot
I'm
of
sorry, I'm going to give you, it's your ability. Your ability, because you're driven to do it, you like to do it, and you do it, you practice a lot, so that makes you what you are on the shooting side. Because I know a lot of guys that may be as capable as you would be, but they don't practice as much as you, and they're not as driven as you.
Yeah.
Obviously, your success has proven how driven you are, and they couldn't do what you're doing. So, they just don't take it as seriously, and they couldn't shoot like you shoot, even though if they practice as much, they probably would be able to.
What's the farthest shot you've ever taken on a whitetail?
35 yards.
35?
That's my max, yep. I've shot an elk at 40, and I shot an elk out of a saddle at 5. 5 yards straight
Really?
down, the second time I went out there was 1999. I shot just a 5x5 in Colorado on federal land out of a saddle.
Nice.
I actually rattled it in with a whitetail rattle bag.
Did you really?
Yes, I did.
You had to be the first guy to ever
I'm
shoot
sure
one out of a
I
saddle.
was the first guy to
had to
shoot
be.
one out of a saddle, and I'm sure I'm the first guy that ever rattled an elk in with a whitetail
I would
rattle
think
bag.
so.
A night
Probably the
nail
only guy
rattle
that's
bag.
ever tried.
Yeah, exactly. The only guy that tried. It was pretty funny.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, you'd be surprised. I've killed 2 whitetail right at 41. My longest is 52, but everything else has been 35 and in. So, and I would say the vast majority of those are in that, that 15 to 25 range, which is, that's where we want to get. It's bow hunting's a close quarter game. I don't want to take longer shots. That's not my goal. My goal is to get close, and I want to be in there, and take good ethical shots. But, if the situation's right, you got a broadside deer, he's calm, clear shooting lanes.
No wind.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident. I had a conversation the other day. Tony Peterson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were talking about archery and practicing, and I know you do this. And we were talking about, some of the things why some guys are more successful than others. And it was a podcast, and one of the things I stressed was, and we hear it all the time, is like getting good with your weapon. I mean, it's kind of like a boring answer, but I mean, really, like I practice year round, and I try to get real confident, build that muscle memory. But then like in the month and a half leading up to the season, I switched completely from, 100-yard shots on flat ground.
Yeah.
Now I started getting in my saddle. I start taking, steeper shots, different angles.
Replicating hunting scenarios.
Yes, through little holes in the brush. I try to make really challenging shots because I know in the woods, when that shot opportunity materializes, it's very rarely ever perfectly broadside, 15 yards, he's standing still. It's either rushed, or you have to lean a little bit, or crouch down a little bit, or you got to hug a tree, or through a V, or over a branch, so the trajectory carries over. So I practice those things
awkward positions.
Those awkward positions. Just last year.
Yeah, I do too. You're right.
So just last year, my very first buck I shot in Michigan. It was October 2nd. It was a weak side shot. The opposite side of the tree.
Tough shot.
I wasn't expecting it.
Yep.
And the deer was moving by so fast, I didn't feel like I had time to go around the tree.
Right.
So it was like now or never. And I did one of these, and I turned, and I was twisted.
Yep.
35-yard shot. That's a tough shot.
That's a very tough shot.
It's a very tough shot. But, I've practiced that so many times, and it was just, I didn't even think about it. It was boom.
Automatic.
Drawback, automatic, and execute the shot, double lung.
Yep.
The second one, the public land buck I showed you there a while back, that one was more standard. He was just I was on the back side of the tree. he came in, turned broadside, and I just leaned out and made the shot. So that one was pretty straightforward. The Ohio buck was another one, not necessarily a super challenging shot, but it was very quick. You know, it was very rushed. I was in the saddle like this, facing this way, expecting all the movement here, and I just happened to do this and catch something out of the corner of my eye, and I turn around and he's trotting like this.
Behind you.
Yep, and I don't even have my bow in my hand, and I stopped him with my back to him. I go, man, just to get him to stop because he's this far.
And you don't have your bow in your hand.
No bow no bow in my hand at all.
Wow.
But if I don't stop him, he's out of the shooting
gone.
lane. So I think at least get him stopped. And maybe I was really high up. I was like, maybe he won't see this. So I grab it and I turn like this, and I turn all the way around, and I come to full draw, and he's still there doing one of these.
Looking.
Yep.
Looking for the noise.
Nailed him. Yep. Perfect shot.
That's such an awesome
Yeah, but it was so
feeling.
rushed. But you know, when you practice like that, and I think of it as like training. Like if you were a boxer, you wouldn't train for your championship fight by sparring light with a guy that's not good. You're gonna train above what you're gonna hopefully meet in the ring.
You're ready for it.
You know, or if you're a runner, you're not gonna train for a 10-mile race by running 3 miles and 5 miles. No, you should be running 15.
Yeah.
So in that 10-mile race, the 10 feels easy.
Yes.
And that's the way I've always looked at it. So I try to practice those really hard shots where, you know, some might even consider them unethical. You know, like through a little V, there's a little hole the size of a softball. Well, sometimes.
But you practice enough to feel confident making that shot.
Right.
If you know the size of the hole you can shoot through.
And sometimes you find those shots in the woods, and I feel like I'm able to get a few more shots off ethically with confidence than a lot of other hunters.
Yeah.
I mean, just at the top of your house here, you have a platform built.
Yeah,
so that you can shoot from an elevated position.
And I got trees prepped in the yard, and and I practiced that weak shot. Of all the bucks I've shot out of the saddle, I've only shot one buck on the weak side, and it wasn't that many years ago. I think it was 2015.
Really?
It was a real wide 10-point, Michigan, and same deal. I was hunting on the edge of this. There was an oak edge butting up to a standing cornfield, and it was like mid-October. I honestly did not. I was going to rattle and try and pull something out of the corn to the edge and hopefully shoot something. And it's mid-October, and all of a sudden this doe, I heard there was a swamp behind me. She come running, busting out of the swamp, and she ran right by, literally 5 or 6 yards from the right side of my tree. She ran into the standing cornfield, and she was panting, so she must have been coming into heat early. And all of a sudden, you know, I look around, I grab my bow, obviously, immediately, and I didn't even have time to swing around the tree like you were talking about, so I could swing around the tree and take that shot to my left, my strong shot. And I did the same thing. He was coming, and I knew she was going to go on that very direct, absolute trail she was on, and I jerked my bow over top of my body, and I'm up there pretty high. And he stopped. He stopped right on the edge. And I was ready to shoot. I was already at full draw, but he stopped, and I don't think maybe she was quite in heat, but he was chasing her, and I don't think he wanted to run into that cornfield because he was over 20-inch inside spread. And it's hard for a buck to run through rows crosswise, you know, through standing corn. So, but anyway, he stopped, and you know, I pulled my bow over the top, and I made that shot, and that's an awkward shot. But like you said, you practice those shots. You know, you always have to practice every possible scenario of an opportunity you think you may get. And it may never come to fruition where you need it, but if you do, it's there, and it's an auto shot.
So, but most guys, you know, that don't practice that, they're gonna encounter those shots that are never perfect in the woods, and they're gonna screw it up, or they're gonna put a bad hit on it. Long track job, missed buck, you know.
Yep.
And so it's important, you know, it never happens just like it does in the backyard when you got your flip-flops on and flat ground and you're shooting at a 3D target at 25 yards broadside. It never happens like that.
Never.
It's always rushed.
Yep.
Or your adrenaline's going, or you got to slip it through something. So,
yep.
Yeah, that's a big deal. A lot of guys don't talk about that or think about that, but you know, they should.
Yeah, there's lots of things people don't talk about that they definitely should talk about, and that's the main reason I got the tree prepped,
Yeah.
in the yard, is for shooting through holes and stuff. And hopefully you never have those. I'm pretty good and pretty adamant about making decent shooting lanes,
Yep.
even on public land if I have to.
Yep.
I mean, there's no sense hunting some spot if a deer comes through and you don't have a shot opportunity. So
Right.
you always want to make a shot opportunity, and it just blows me away sometimes when I'm scouting public land. I mean, it's so rare that I see another hunter's location set up in heavy security cover. Usually it's in more open timber, but when I do see somebody set up in heavy cover, they don't seem to have much for shooting lanes.
Mm-hmm.
They may have a little tiny 12 or 18-inch shooting area, and during the rut phases when bucks are chasing, trying to stop a deer in such a small spot is really difficult to do.
Pretty unlikely you'll get that shot.
So I like to have good shooting lanes, but there's still many times where they'll just stop in a hole and you gotta take that shot. Fortunately for me, most of my shots are kind of like where you were 15 to 25 is your average shot. Mine now are probably 12 to 18, I'd say, what I try to set up on. 12 to 20, I'd say, is my comfort range.